my heart because a lot of times as Christians, we go through seasons where it feels almost impossible to press in, and we lose sight of why we're even doing what we're doing, So we're kind of like doing it through mechanics, but we need to get into resolve. And what is resolve? Resolve means you decide firmly on a course of action. It means determination. It means you make up your mind. It means resolution. And that's what we need. We need that as Christians. Because if we don't have this, then when things come against us as Christians, if we have not made up our mind, guess what's going to happen? The enemy's going to take us off course. He's going to shipwreck our faith. He's going to distract us. He's going to make us doubt God. He's going to make us feel, like as if it's about us, not about God. When we have a determination, then we're like, no matter what. You've seen those people, when they get determined, nobody can change their mind. I'm sure we've all met some people that are very, very determined, And it's almost like people get frustrated with people that have a determination because they want it to be different. They want them to like kind of sway a little bit. But it's like, it's so important. And as I was thinking about a resolve and, thinking about people in the Bible, it's like I went to David. So I'm going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And we know this chapter as the David and Goliath story. But my concentration is going to be more on the heart of David, the resolve in David's heart, and what even led him to even be able to face off Goliath on the battlefield. So the first 16 scriptures, I'm not going to read them, but this is where, Israel's on one side of the valley and the Philistines are on the other side, and they're just like, face off. It's not like the Wild Wild West kind of face off, but they're on the sides and they're just looking at each other. Here's this over 9-foot giant coming out every single day and night, coming out and taunting them, coming out and, telling them off and enticing them, trying to cause somebody to step up, come and fight with me. And he's cursing them in the name of his gods. And, he's pretty much like, I know I got this one in the bag. That's really what it was. So he was mocking them every single day. For 40 days, he was just mocking them. So I'm going to start in verse 17. And it says, Then Jesse said to his son David, Take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp. So 3 of his brothers were at the battlefield. And so now his dad's sending him over. And carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper, and took the things and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in a battle array, army against army. So here they're like, continuous, just back and forth. That's really what he's saying. And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines. And he spoke according to the same words. So David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So every time Goliath came out to the battlefield. What did the guys do? They ran. You know, like the other day, my baby was so cute. My brother was doing 4th of July fireworks, and she saw the lights, and she's like, wow, wow. And then it starts crackling, like the noise comes, and she booked it. You know, she booked it. And this is the guys, you know. They're coming out, and they're all shouting back and forth. But as soon as Goliath comes out to the field, they book it. You know, it's the same thing. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich him with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the manner, saying, so shall it be done for the man who kills him. So David did not go with this intention. You know, let's think about it. His father sent him to go take food. He goes, he gets food. He finds himself, you know, he goes and tells his brother, hey, what's up? What's going on? And then he sees this Philistine coming out, mocking the people of God. That's what caught David's attention. It wasn't that he was coming out. It was that he was mocking the people of God. He was taunting them. And that is what bothered David. So he starts inquiring, well, what's going to happen if somebody defeats him, you know? Because who in the world does this guy think he is? That's David's attitude. And remember, he's just a youngster, you know? But he was not like all the other men. All the other men were booking it, and this guy was like, who in the world does he think he is? I don't think so, you know? That was his attitude. And so that's what he wanted to do. David was inquiring because, one, he cared about God's people. And two, he just didn't like bullies. I mean, I don't like bullies, you know? I don't like them. And then verse 28, it says, now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, why do you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? Then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these people answered him as the first ones did. So his brother got mad at him because he thought that he knew David's heart. He thought he knew the reason why David was inquiring about this Philistine. But the thing is, David was already gearing up in his heart. He was already setting his heart towards something. But his brother comes and accuses him of pride. Don't you hate that? Don't you hate that? Here you are, you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to do what God's called you to do. You're inquiring about certain things, and then here comes people or the enemy. Oh, it's because you're full of pride. Oh, it's because of this. Oh, it's because of that. They're accusing you for doing the right thing. You're always getting accused because they think you have the wrong motives, because they think you have the wrong heart. I hate when that happens to me. I'm like, man, if you knew my heart, you would not be talking to me like that. You wouldn't be telling me things like that. See, but the thing is, true motives always get revealed. We know when it's out of actual pride because the evidence comes with it. But we also know when the motives are not out of pride because you will also see that as well. So even though his brother was mad at him, that did not stop David. David continued as if his brother never said nothing. He continued to ask, okay, what about this? What? So he kept on going. He wanted to see this Philistine stopped. That was David's goal. I do not like this Philistine coming against God's people like that. That was his intention. So verse 31, it goes on to say, now when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. Then David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Okay, it wasn't Saul. Remember, Saul was king. It wasn't Saul telling David this. It was David telling Saul this. He said, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go up against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and struck it, and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. This is everything. Saul was trying to tell him, there is no way you can do this. You are nothing but a youngster. You are young. This man has grown up in war. This man is all he knows. Saul didn't believe that David was capable, which, if we look at it in the natural, it's true. Here's this giant all dressed up in his armor, and here's this little young guy, He was just a youngster. But sometimes that could be us. Sometimes God puts something in our heart, but the enemy or people are telling you you're incapable. The enemy is telling you you can't do this because you're too weak, you're too fragile, you're too young, you're too this, you're too that. And people will begin to lie to you and make you feel like you're inadequate, sometimes because of their experience. Sometimes people think that their experience is everything. But experience isn't everything. Look at David. Look at David. David said, this was David's answer. He said, pretty much telling them, look, I understand where you're coming from, but God gave me my own experiences. God allowed me to have my own experiences. God prepared me in his own way. God prepared me out in the boonies where nobody could see. He was in the wilderness tending to the flock, to the sheep. It was him and the wild animals. That was it. And he's like, God gave me my own experiences. I can do it because just like God was with me then, God will be with me today. God is with me today. He was trying to tell him, look, he's going to be with me like he was in my other experiences. And that's the powerful thing about how God works in our lives. All of us have individual experiences that help us get trained. That's what God does. But see, that was David's resolve talking. He had resolved it in his heart, and he was determined that he was going to stop this Philistine on the behalf of God's people. He was determined to act. He made a decision. Nobody wants to go and fight this Philistine. Even though all these men are trained for war, not one of them stepped up to Goliath. But this boy that was untrained was like, I'm willing to go. I'm willing to step up. I'm willing to give God his glory. He made a decision to act. He made a decision to do something about it. And that's the thing. See, you might have all the experience in the world, but if you don't have resolve, what good is it? You might have experience, but if all you do is sit there and just talk about it, what good is it? Versus the person who doesn't have the experience, but they're willing to act on it. They're willing to do something with it. And that's what we need. We need people to act on God's behalf. Verse 38. So Saul clothed David with his armor, and he put a bronze helmet on his head. He also clothed him with a coat of mail. David fastened his sword to his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. David couldn't fit in the military armor, or he just wasn't comfortable with it. I don't know exactly. But I'm sure if they were putting on a man's suit, trying to put it on him, it probably didn't fit right. But see, this is what we have to really understand. When you are about to go up against something, do not put on somebody else's armor. It will not fit you. They can try to put their stuff on you, like this will help you, that will help you, but you have not tested it yet. It has not been proven in your life yet. It's been proven in their life. They can give you advice, but they cannot put that on you. Because now you're not going to be able to walk. David was trying to walk and he couldn't. See, when you try to put on somebody else's experience as if it's your own, fail. When you try to take on somebody else's faith as if it's your own, fail. When you try to go based on somebody else's testimony, fail. You're not going to get nowhere. You're not going to move. You're not going to see victory. You're not going to see God move on your behalf. And we cannot put that on. For those weapons were not for us. Those weapons were for them. God's going to give you, and God has already given you what works for you. Don't put on somebody else's stuff. Instead, what we need to do, in verse 40, it says, Then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, in a pouch which he had. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. This is how it works. You fight against the enemy with what God has already given you. David knew these things. These things he brought with him. He didn't put on anything else. He didn't have to put up anything else. He didn't have to pick up anything else except the stones. That's the only thing he picked up from there. Everything else he had brought with him. So he fought with what he was familiar with. What he was familiar. Now, what we have to kind of pay attention to in our walk, are we familiar with prayer? Are we familiar with the presence of God? Are we familiar when God is moving? Are we familiar with God's movements? Are we familiar with God's voice? Are we familiar with God's word? Are we putting it on as if it's ours? Are we putting it on? Because those are the things that you should be familiar with that gives you all you need. That's all you need. You don't need anything more. You don't need to pick up pride trying to make you act like you can call out that devil and be like, come on, devil, let's go. Yeah, right. You're going to be the one running and booking it. You know what I mean? It's like you're calling him, taunting him. Come on, devil. Come on, let's go, let's go. And then you're the first one running. You know what I mean? You hear his voice and you start shaking. You know? Why? David was not going out there and taunting him. He went out there when he was ready. He went out there when he was ready. He didn't start talking back to that Philistine from the other side. You know what I mean? He was gearing up. He was gearing up. Before you step out onto that battlefield, you better be gearing up. Every single day you wake up, it's a day you're gearing up for whatever comes. It's another day. Verse 41, it says, so the Philistine came and began drawing near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. So this giant still needed another person in front of him with the shield. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good looking. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give you your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, and all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all the assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Come on. Look at David. Look at David. He didn't go out there in all this, array. Now, later in life, David became a warrior, right? But in this time, he was only a youth. Goliath was tough. Goliath was like, yes, nobody's going to come up against me. He was so confident in his flesh. He was so confident coming up against Israel. And obviously with right reason, because every time he was coming out, they were running. So he was not scared at all. He knew that he can defeat him. But what he did not see coming was this young kid. As a matter of fact, when he did see David coming, he was mad. He despised David in that moment because he was kind of like, are you serious? You know what I mean? Are you serious? Are you seriously sending this kid up against a warrior like me? He felt probably almost, offended. He probably got offended, It's like, why are you guys sending a little kid to me? And he was just, I'm sure he did not think that this was a real thing. You know what I mean? He's like, am I going to go fetch? But I noticed that even in the kingdom of God, people have a hard time respecting younger people. Older people, when here God's raising somebody up that's younger, I noticed that there is some people that have a hard time accepting that. They get offended because how is this young person coming and telling me what to do? How is this young person going to be able to lead me? There's no way. I don't think so. Guess what? I think so. I think so. Why? Not because of experience, but because of what was in them. See, Goliath in this moment could not recognize that although David didn't come to him in a warrior attire or warrior armor, he had something greater than that. He had something greater than that. He had faith. He had faith in the power of his God. He turned the battle over to God way before he got on that battlefield. Remember? He said the battle is the Lord's. He was already proclaiming the victory that God was going to give him, not only because of his past experience that God has given him, but because he had full faith that God is not going to allow this man to defy God's people. That's what this was about. Before David ever stepped out in front of Goliath, he already knew the battle was not his. It was God's. See, and when you step out into this battlefield, because you know what? Yes, the battlefield is in our mind, but there's a battlefield going out there as well, you know? There's a battlefield going on. And when you wake up every morning, what decision have you made? Have you made up your mind to turn over this battlefield over to God? Have you made up in your mind to give God the victory, give God his place, give God the glory, because he's about to go and do something before you? God, it's not me, it's you. Think about it. Put yourself in this situation. I mean, Al and Shannon, they put up that Goliath, right? And when we stand next to it, we're like little midgets, right? We're tiny. You know, I can say what? Even like when Pastor is standing there, he still looks small next to Goliath. So if David was still younger, he was probably shorter. No armor except his staff and a slingshot. Think about that. Think about that. And how many times a day do we go around trying to put on all these things? You know? It's like we're putting on all this armor. And it's like, well, how many things of armor do you have? Like, I don't have that many sets. One set is all we need. Thank you. If you're putting it on right, that's all you need. Right? I know as girls, we like a little bling bling and we like to like change up our outfits, you know, and our jewelry and all that stuff. But when you have faith, that's all you need. All you need is faith. You don't need to accessorize faith. Faith does not need no bling bling. You know what I mean? Faith does not need you to draw out your sword. It's your shield and it's the sword. It's God uses his word. God uses your faith to go before you, to guard you, to keep you, to help you. God didn't tell David, hey, don't go into the battlefield. He said, go, right? Go. I'm going with you. He knew God was with him. I highly doubt he didn't think God was not with him. But see, he was that confident because he knew God's presence. Have you ever been in a place where you're about to like go into something or you're about to make a decision and you don't feel right about it? You're like, something doesn't feel right. I don't have this peace. I just don't think this is right for me. That's the presence of God. That's the Holy Spirit. He's already trying to stop you from going into where he's not at, right? Now it's our choice whether we listen or not. But it's the same thing. When God is leading us into something or we feel God leading us into something, we have confidence that we know he's with us. We have confidence that I know this is God. I feel his peace. I just feel it in my spirit because we have the presence of God. So, though he was like, how do you say, he had already turned it over, David had a resolve in his heart to see this Philistine come down. It was set. It was set. He was not going to step out on that battlefield because unless he knew that he was going to go down. But if we look at it, God did not put David through small battles before throwing him into the big ones. God didn't do that. He wasn't like out in the protecting the sheep, fighting off skunks. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden he's fighting this Goliath, this giant. He didn't start off fighting off skunks. No, he started off killing, okay, not just fighting, killing bears and lions. That is what prepared him for this giant. That was the things. This is why when Saul tried to stop him, he said, no, I've already had my experience. I've come against some ferocious things. I've come against things that can kill me. But God gave me the victory. So if he would have started just fighting off little skunks or little things trying to bother the sheep, right? He probably would not have had the faith that he needed to fight this giant. But God knows that if we depend on him, the battles we face today are our preparation for our battles tomorrow. Do you really understand that? And a lot of times the battles we're fighting today, we're already quitting. We're already quitting. I can't do this one, God. I'm not going to make it, God. I've been there, done that. I don't want to do it. But yet, the more I push through, then all of a sudden, I get to the next battle, and I'm like, well, that one was nothing. Now this one, I really can't make it. Now this one's really going to take me out. If I wouldn't have went through the first battle, I would have never been able to get to the second battle. If I didn't give God that room enough to show himself real, then I would not have had the faith to get me through the next one. See, each battle you face, it's preparing you for tomorrow. Until the day we make heaven our home, we're always in preparation. We're always in preparation. David wanted to prove there is one true God. That was his decision. I need them to see that there is only one true God. One true God in Israel, powerful enough to help him stop this Philistine. Powerful enough to take away those things that were coming against the people of God. And sometimes it takes the nobodies to rise up, have faith, and be willing to show God's power through you. It takes the nobodies. It takes the ones that everybody underestimates. I like the underdogs. I always root for the underdogs. Why? Because I'm like, somebody needs to show that bully what's up. You know what I mean? They're all confident because they've won all these battles. But there's always somebody that's going to come and take you out. Are you willing to be that nobody that God can show himself through? Are you willing to be the one that everyone underestimates and you don't care about it? You're like, I don't care what you got to tell me. I don't care what you're telling me. You're telling me it's pride. You're telling me I shouldn't do it. You're telling me I can't do it. But guess what? I don't care about none of that. Because God, I know you're going to go with me. God, you're going to go before me. No matter who doesn't believe in you or who tries to stop you. Have you got that resolve in your spirit? Do you have that determination in your heart to serve a God? Not half-hearted, not looking like the world, not in doubt, but in full confidence. Full confidence that God wants to do something through you and with you. See, because what God's doing on the inside begins to show on the outside. If God is working in you, it starts to pour out. You don't even realize you're just pouring it out. But if you're just stale, you just start to get moldy and crusty. You know what I mean? You're not helping nobody. You're not going to stand up in faith. You're not going to be determined to do what God has asked you to do. We don't know how long we have here. What if you're still here another 50 years? Another 60, another 80, another 100? I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know how long you're supposed to stay here. Hopefully not for me. Thank you very much. But are you going to be determined every single day for the rest of your life? Because Paul said, I fought the good fight. I poured out my life as an offering. He did not stop. He did not quit. And the thing about Christians is a lot of times we quit before we start. We quit before we start. We take a baby step and they're like, okay, I did it. What was that? You're just getting started. What you mean? Believe God that He will help you, and that in your every single battle, turn it over to God. Turn it over to the King. Turn it over to the one who is the Lord of the host. He is the Lord of the armies. There is more for us than against us. Do we believe that? Remember the prophet when they were being surrounded? And then the prophet prayed for his servant that was scared. And he said, God, show him. And then he started looking around and he saw an angelic host all around him. You know, sometimes my husband, he thinks I'm a little crazy because sometimes I don't really think about certain things. I'll just like step out in the road, or I'll go like chase tracks or something out in the wild. And he's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, but, you know, like, I don't know. That's kind of cool. You got to go look for it. He's like, you're going to be those memes where people are like, you stupid idiot. What are you doing? I'm like, well, yeah, but I'd rather be that than the ones that are like, I can't do nothing. I'm scared, you know. I'd rather do that, you know. At least I went out doing what I like to do, you know. And not somebody come and take me out because, you know, I didn't even see them coming. God gives you victory. But if you don't let Him give you victory in the first battle, you're not going to see victory or the second. If you get a few victories and then you stop, you're no longer going to see victories until you start again. You know? So my encouragement for today is let your resolve, let your determination cause you to take action. Let your determination and you making up your mind to serve God and give Him everything, let that resolve be greater than your fear. Let that resolve be greater than the doubts, the lies, the people, the enemies. Let it be greater. Because if it's greater, you're going to see God do amazing things, just like David. Amen? I mean, we might not face a giant, but